Hi guys, let's look at some predictions for the 2024 A-Level PE Paper 2 for Edexcel. So this is a bit of a disclaimer that I don't know the exam paper, I don't work for the exam board, I just reasonably good guessing at what is likely to come up in the exam paper. Now, you should be watching this probably in your last bits of revision coming up to the exam paper, so hopefully this will just be more of a guide in how you should approach the paper and last minute sort of questions that you might want to refine. So firstly, you want to look at the paper is broken into essentially three sections. The skill and the psychology is one section, and then they're broken into two parts, and then the social is the second section. So if you look at the skill, it will follow a format where you have a series of short answer questions followed by a 15 marker, and same for the psychology paper, which is going to be a series of shorter answer questions and then a 15 marker, whereas the social will be a series of shorter answer questions followed by a slightly longer question and then two 15 markers. So this is really going to be more about your essay writing skills, whereas your skill is going to be a mixture of knowledge recall and essay writing skills. So if you just notice quickly though, in the skill sections, there was three, this is last year's paper, there was three 2 markers and one 4 marker. So it's really looking for your ability to define, probably apply the sort of application, the concept you're looking at, and then your sort of analysis section. And you've really got to break it down into AO1, AO2, AO3. So generally, if the wording in your 15 marker says knowledge, that's going to be 5 marks of like defining the concept, and then followed by 10 marks of an evaluative sort of side of it. If the example says, if it says apply or examples, you're looking at the AO2 section. That's 5 marks of giving sort of examples, and then the evaluative section. So that's sort of your approach to the 15 markers. The psychology paper is similar sort of fashion, so a definition for 1 mark, 2 marks might be just a description, and then 3 marks with the application. So you can see it's very much knowledge recall, and then you get your evaluative sort of 15 marker. Social side, you've got a mix of definitions, descriptions, and then sort of evaluative sort of comments. Now in social, you're not really going to get many applications. It's going to be more about the advantages and disadvantages side of it, rather than application points. And this 8 marker was more of a comparative sort of question, plus then you get followed by 2 15 markers. So quick tips for the exam, I would suggest you flick to the back of the papers and just quickly glance at what the 15 markers are going to be, because they're going to take up the bulk of your time. If you imagine that's 15 minutes per question, 15 markers, that's going to take up a good hour of your time, and then the remainder of your exam paper is going to be doing the shorter answer questions. So I would suggest you go straight to the back of each section. So what you'll have is the skill section first, then the psychology section, and the social section, and just quickly skim through them, and in the white area around your exam paper just make some notes, breaking down what the questions are after, getting information out of your head that you've revised, that you've crammed in, and just get jotted on a bit of paper around the area, or even just on the page, and then you can cross it out for the 15 markers if you don't want it counted. So remember, when you are approaching those 15 markers, break it down into sort of five marks as an introduction, which will be related to the exam question. So it might be 5 marks on defining and explaining the concept, and then it'll probably be an evaluative sort of 2-sided advantages, disadvantages. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Depending on the types of questions that you've got. Social, definitely it will probably be it'll be a discuss type question where you'll probably have to say I agree with this point or I disagree with this point, and put 2 sides of an argument. Psychology probably will be more of an advantages disadvantages type question, same with the skill acquisition ones. So have that in mind when you're looking at your 15 mark exam questions, and they'll make or break your performance in that exam. So really spend some time focusing on those areas. Now let's get into some of the predictions and help you refine your revision. So starting off with the skill, and what you can see is I've gone through all the past paper questions, since the sample paper was introduced into this current year, and I've left in here my predictions from last year of 2023, so you can see roughly where I guessed right and where I didn't guess right, or I told my students to revise. It didn't come up, so it may be likely to come up now. So if we start with the coach and the performer section in skill acquisition, dissection of a skill is due to come up pretty soon, but if you look in the previous sort of marks, there's only about 2-mark exam questions. So and when you're looking at your last minute revision, often the questions will, and the mark schemes will just incorporate wordings from the specification. So really get the specification out and really just look at some of these key words. So preparation, execution, recovery phases, exploration of how to analyze the skill in order to identify its strengths and weaknesses. So see if you can break that one down in a little bit more detail. But again, it hasn't come up very often. If you want to get some hints, go back to the 2020 paper and just have a look at the type of question it's worded there. Another area that hasn't come up and is a big area is skill classification. It'll probably be a skill. It has been a 15-mark exam question back in 2020, so it'd be useful going back and revising that in case it comes up as a 15-marker. But it's going to be probably justifying why a skill is placed on a continuum, giving some sort of examples of the skill that is on the continuum and sort of definitions and justification of why a skill is at a particular point. Now, it might be that you're putting a skill midway through and why it's not fully one end or the other end. So definitely have that sort of area revised. It is due to come up. It will come up. Transfer skills is potentially an area you want to just touch up on. It's not come up for a while. I haven't highlighted it, but it potentially could come up as well. We've got a 2-year gap between transfer of skills. Other big area I think is due to come up as Thorndike's laws of learning and learning theories. If you look, you know, it's been a while since we've had learning theories. In general, the last set of learning theories questions was a 15-marker a couple of years ago on conditioning. I would suggest Thorndike's laws is a good starting point for your revision, and Fitz and Posner's stages of learning. Could that be combined into a 15-marker potentially? So it's up to you whether you want to take my advice on that and revise it. Knowledge practices, there was a 15-marker in 2021 on practice methods and structures. There was a question on practice last year's paper, so will it come up? I'm not too sure. And that last year's question was on whole part whole practice. So I think the area, if you're looking at practice, is mental practice. Has not come up yet, so there's a good chance it's coming up soon. So mental rehearsal, mental practice, see what that one comes up. Hopefully it will. Types of guidance, it comes up regularly, but there's generally a few years gaps between it. Guidance is a nice area for a 15-mark exam question. It wouldn't be bad if it's an area that you're not sure about, just have a quick read up on. But we haven't seen a technology question for a while. So potentially it might come up with linked into technology. So what methods of technology can help you with your guidance, and you know, it could be visual, verbal guidance, linking different methods of technology to measure, monitor, and evaluate performance. So if that was going to come up, that would potentially be a 15-mark exam question, but sort of the use of technology in that area. The other side of it, just while I'm talking about this, is to watch out for exam questions, particularly 15-marker that says use your knowledge and experience from across the course of the study. And in that case, you've got to talk about your social, your skill, your psychology, and your anatomy and physiology sections to get the full marks in the 15-mark exam question. So just be wary, and that one sort of comes up quite a bit in the exam papers. Now, feedback was asked last year. They touched on feedback, so will it be used? Potentially, potentially not, but if it does come up, I would suggest open and closed loop theory of feedback would be my money of where I would revise. It's one that catches students out a bit, but you can see it's generally a 4-mark exam question. So sort of explaining comparing the two types of feedback, open and closed loop, or there's 3 obviously. So you need to look at that one. Okay, so information processing and memory models. Now, last year the 15 marker was on schema theory, and obviously that's linked to the long-term memory, and we get a regular question on reaction time coming up every year. So it sort of comes up, and if you break down the specification, you can see Hicks's law, psychological refractory period, and we've had Hicks's law, and then the psychological refractory period. Does that mean we're going to get another one? Possibly. I mean, there's a 15 marker here on feedback, so it is one that's come up regularly. Sorry, reaction times, it comes up regularly. I would suggest though, in this time, it might be more about information processing, short-term and the short-term memory, things like DCR, detect, compare, recognize, hasn't come up for a long time. One of the information processing models, and I would imagine that if that would be an area where if you revised it as a 15 mark exam question, both that and memory models, it will cover you for any shorter answer questions that might come up. You know, selective attention fits in really nicely with that. So I would suggest that's an area that is due to come up and revise. If we move on to the psychology part of that paper, so it'd be the second part of the exam paper. Remember, you don't have to go in order. Pick your strongest and then work way backwards, I would suggest, so you can guarantee your marks. First area that hasn't been asked for a while and is quite regularly asked is personality theories. It has been Hollander's theory in the past, but I would suggest just make sure you understand your personality theories. There's enough information on personality to make it a 15 marker, and as you can see, there hasn't been a 15 marker in this area. Attitudes would be a potential area to revise as well. Probably, like it says, a 3 marker, a bouncing 3 marker every year, so every other year sort of thing. So a quick revision on attitudes would be useful. Arousal came up as a 15 marker last year, so if it is going to come up, it'll be a short, maybe 1 or 2 mark exam question on arousal and anxiety. Moving on to the areas of anxiety, again, yeah, like I said, it came up last year, and so did aggression. So probably these areas won't be as detailed. Perhaps they might chuck you a 15 marker on aggression, because there is a lot of information you could have on aggression, but generally they do give a bit of interspersion. But you can see, obviously, the last sort of set of real big questions was in 2018 paper for aggression on 15 markers, and it's followed up by a quick 6 marker on the AS paper 2019. They don't do AS papers anymore, so it might be worth just going back to that 2018 paper, just read over that aggression 15 marker and use that as a little bit of revision. But if it was to come up, potentially that could be there. Motivation theories came up last year, and it has come up quite regularly, NAC and NAF, achievement motivation, so probably not an area that will be asked, but as I said, it's predictions. And then again, these are sort of asked last year, your sort of social inhibition, and again that's sort of linked to arousal. And then the characteristics in group dynamics was asked last year, but obviously, as you see, there was a 3 marker in 2019 followed by a 15 marker in 2020. Could there be another 15 marker? Possibly. Wouldn't be bad to just read over it in case it comes up. And these are probably my more sort of solid predictions. Is goal setting. It is due to come up. A couple of gaps in it. Worthwhile looking back in the 2021 15 marker just to see what type of questions and areas you could revise for that. Weiner's attribution theory, possibly a small answer question on there, but I doubt it. I would probably put more my money on confidence, and rather than self-efficacy, I'll probably look at Veely's sports confidence model, self-confidence model. as a revision tool and where you'll want to look at. And again, that's probably got enough content in the world of self-confidence and impact for a 15-mark exam question. Leadership came up last year. It was only a 1 marker as a definition. Could it come up again? There has been a 15 marker back in 2019, so possibly. So that's my areas of the skill and psychology predictions. If we move on to social paper, generally you want to be looking at the role of popular recreations. It'll probably be only a 4-mark exam question, probably something along the lines of how the characteristics of popular recreations reflected society. And again, there's been quite a big trend in the Industrial Revolution being asked as an exam question. Maybe the roles of urbanization, and I put a video on there the other day, so just have a quick watch of that video to give you an idea. They haven't really asked much questions on schools. They do talk about sort of like the role of rationalization in sport, and again, that's on my video that I talked about in the Industrial Revolution, so it'd be worthwhile watching that back. But the schools don't tend to get asked that often, so it might be something that could come up as a question. Okay, and then if we're looking at equality and diversity, last year we had questions on women in and a 15 marker on the barriers to women in sport. The area that probably was due to come up, and I would suggest is worthwhile revising as a 15 marker because it last came up in a sample question, is migration patterns and the impact of labour migration, which I did a video on recently. And then last year also there came a 15-mark question on globalization, but it's really aimed at the sort of like the impact of media and commercialization on the globalization of sport, rather than globalization of sport and the spread of sport, which I will talk about in a few seconds. So I think the area to revise is this bit about colonial diffusion and the spread of sport around the British Empire. I have made a video on that, so do go back and watch it. There was a very difficult exam question back in 2019 for the AS paper. It was a 12 marker, so that converted over to 15 could come up again. It was whether there is, it's an evaluative type question, where it's looking at whether it is accepted or rejected, the sort of the spread of sport. It is a challenging question, so could come up again. Do revise that area. It won't hurt to look at it. The national governing bodies could come up, but has been reasonably recently asked. It might be the roles and regulations of the national governing body, and then a bit of critique of those systems. The big area that we want to look at is commercialization. Before that, the Olympics and the values of the Olympic Games. Now, you can see it comes up reasonably regularly, and it is due to come up, and I made a video on that. It's a fairly long video on it, but it's worth watching just to cover all the aspects of the values and the whether they're still valid, and possibly 15-mark exam question. Nice area for that. Another area that you can see coming dotted up regularly is commercialization. You know, all these sort of regular exam questions on commercialization. I'd anticipate there will be an exam question on commercialization. Last year it was just on defining these aspects. Advertising, sponsorship, endorsement, and merchandising. So just sort of definitions on that. I would suggest that the Olympics, the impacts of the Olympics, could be a exam question. So it may be the ideals of the Olympics, or like the commercial impacts of the Olympics if it comes up, or franchises. So, and again, look, franchises due to come up, so definitely revise those aspects of franchises. And if I get a chance, I'll whack a video up on that. Ethics and deviance is always an area that might come up as well. I'd imagine it'd either be commercialism or ethics and deviance. And if I was potentially revising this sort of area of ethics and deviance, I would be looking at the sort of historical, whether ethics and deviance is a historical thing, or whether it's a new thing. So whether it's developing or it's more common now because of it's been more in the media and things like that. So definitely look at that. Ethics and deviance. It's due an area of coming up. Probably drugs in sport. It's a good starting point. So my guess would be that sort of area of drugs, and whether a drug taking is increasing or it's always been there. That's the sort of area you want to revise. The relationship between sport and the media, again, is due to come up pretty soon. And most recently, it was a 15-mark exam question in 2020, and it's 15-mark exam question. But there have been questions on the viewing experience and that side of it, and technology quite recently for media. So think about the golden triangle, particularly when you're revising this area, because it links into commercialization as well. Talent identification routes. Last year there was an 8-marker in the East German model, so if it was to come up, it will probably be the Australian versus UK model, but again, it came up last year. Will it come up again? Who knows? But I would imagine, if I'm putting my money anywhere, it would be participation and barriers in that regard to mass participation, and the benefits of having mass participation in the UK. And we can see sort of there was been a 15-marker back in 2022, participation trends, but what are the benefits of it? So probably show you an exact, if it was 15-marker, it would show you some data to analyze, as I talked about in the video I've made the other day. And then some sort of benefits to the nation, or it could be advantages or disadvantages of encouraging mass participation. So watch that video as part of your revision. So they are my predictions. They are only predictions, but it might be a good starting point to revise. Like I said earlier, go through the specification and try to pick out some of these keywords and phrases, because sometimes they just show up on the exam mark scheme as some of the answers. So hope this has helped. Hope it's helping fine-tune your revision as you go into that exam paper. And this is only valid for the 2024 exam paper, so in the next couple of days. So don't be watching this if it's 2025. Good luck.